You know that moment when you look back and think, how did I not see it? Yes, I still ask myself the same question. My husband was everything a woman is supposed to want. Handsome? Yes. Charming? Extremely. Intelligent? Almost dangerously so. He walked into any room as if he belonged there, the kind of man who made everything look easy, effortless. Waiters knew him by name. Friends admired him. Women, well, women always gave that extra glance. And me, I thought it was just natural charm. I believed him. He took me to all the important dinners, introduced me proudly. This is my wife. His hand on my back, that protective gesture. I felt special, chosen, valued. He remembered my birthday, complimented my dress before we went out, asked my opinion about things that I would later realize he had already decided on his own. But at the time, that was enough. I believed in the attentive husband, the man who held my hand in public, the one who whispered love as if it were a secret meant only for me. Today I understand the truth. He wasn't improvising, he was performing, and I was the perfect audience. Standing ovation at the end of every scene. For years I was convinced our marriage was solid. We had everything: comfort, stability, an active social life, dinners, trips, parties. He loved those environments. He shined in them, and I completed the picture. The elegant wife, the presence that confirmed his image as a successful man. I suspected nothing, or maybe I chose not to suspect, because admitting the truth would mean tearing down the entire story I had built in my head. So I ignored the signs. I ignored how confident he was in delicate situations. I ignored how he always knew exactly what to say. I ignored that ease, the kind that only comes from repetition. I thought it was emotional maturity. Now I know it was experience. He made me feel chosen, and that is dangerous, because when someone makes you feel special enough, you stop asking uncomfortable questions. I never imagined all of it was a carefully constructed character. I never imagined that while I believed I was living a real marriage, he was simply playing a role he already knew by heart. If someone had told me back then that my husband was not who I thought he was, I would have defended him, fiercely, because he didn't just deceive others. He convinced me first. What I didn't know, and what would change everything, was that it would take just one dinner for the character to fail, not because he made a mistake, but because he trusted his own intelligence too much, and because he never, not for a single second, imagined that at that elegant table, surrounded by smiles and wine glasses, I understood exactly what was being said. The evening started like any other. An elegant restaurant, perfect lighting, soft background music at just the right volume. One of our favorite places. He was in his perfect host mode, greeted the maître by name, tipped in advance, pulled my chair out. Everything so well rehearsed it almost looked spontaneous, almost. Then they arrived. A couple he introduced as old friends. She was beautiful in that discreet, dangerous way, not loud, but undeniably present. He, her husband, was composed and confident, the type who speaks little and observes everything. My husband greeted them with familiarity, long hugs, intimate laughter, the kind shared by people who hold stories no one else knows. I smiled, shook hands, said, "Nice to meet you," with the appropriate tone. The conversation began in Portuguese, harmless, small talk, comments about the restaurant, traffic, social trivialities. My husband was shining as always, leading the conversation, making everyone laugh at the right moments. And then, without warning, the language changed. They switched to French, just like that, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. There was no apology, no "do you mind?" nothing. It simply happened, and that was the exact moment something inside me woke up, because while they spoke freely, convinced they were protected by a linguistic barrier, I understood every single word. At first, nothing explicit, just loose comments, inside jokes, references only people with history together would understand. But it was enough to make me uncomfortable. There was complicity there, codes, shared memories that did not include me. My husband smiled differently when he spoke French, a lighter smile, a more genuine one. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was simply being himself, and that hurt more than I expected. I kept smiling, sipped my wine, ate my food. On the outside, I was the calm wife enjoying a pleasant dinner. On the inside, I was assembling a puzzle that didn't yet make complete sense, but already pointed to something very wrong. At one point, she leaned toward him and said something in French that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't obvious. It was simply too intimate. He replied laughing, no filter, no hesitation, forgetting completely that someone else might understand. And that's when it became clear to me, he wasn't being careless, he was being himself. Because when we believe we are not being understood, we remove the mask, we reveal who we really are. And that is exactly what he did at that table. I didn't interrupt, I didn't question, I didn't react, I observed. And with every passing minute it became clearer. This was not a casual friendship. There was something else there, something old, something comfortable, something that breathed on its own. When dinner ended, he was radiant, said goodbye enthusiastically, promising to meet again soon, took my hand as we left, as he always did, and asked if I had enjoyed the evening. I smiled and said yes, but that night, lying next to him, I made a silent decision. I wouldn't say a word until I had absolute certainty about what was happening, because when someone believes you don't understand the language, they reveal far more than they should, and I was willing to listen to everything. 3 weeks later, I suggested something that sounded innocent. What if we invite that couple over for dinner at our place? He loved the idea too quickly. That's great. They'll love it. I've been wanting to return the invitation. That was it. Confirmed. He wanted to see her again. I began planning everything with a calm that surprised even me. Every detail had a purpose. The menu, dishes that wouldn't trap me in the kitchen. The table, soft lighting but not too dim. The music, low, steady. Nothing that would cover voices. I wasn't preparing a dinner, I was setting a trap. On the day itself, I woke up calm, cleaned the house, prepared the food. He commented on how relaxed I seemed, how zen I looked, said it was nice to see me like that, if only he knew. When they arrived, they brought wine and wide smiles. She complimented the house. Her husband observed everything with that attentive gaze of someone who notices too much. We sat at the table. At first, polite Portuguese, neutral conversation. Nothing remarkable, but I knew it wouldn't take long, and it didn't. 15 minutes in, they slipped back into French as naturally as changing clothes. My husband relaxed completely, leaned back in his chair, sipped his wine slowly. He was at home, literally and figuratively, and that's when they started talking. This time with less restraint. She made a comment about being patient. He replied something about not much longer now. They laughed. That laugh shared by people enjoying a delicious secret. I smiled too, poured more wine, offered dessert. On the outside, the perfect hostess. On the inside, recording every word. Yes, I was recording. I won't go into technical details, I won't explain how, but I recorded it. Carefully, legally, without mistakes. And with every sentence it became clearer. This wasn't new, it wasn't a slip. It was a parallel relationship and structured, comfortable. They didn't hide because they believed they didn't have to. At one specific moment she looked at him and said in French, "Just a little longer and you'll be free, free." He smiled, briefly touched her arm, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. I know. Just a little longer. Her husband simply watched. No surprise, no discomfort, and that's when everything clicked. He knew. That man was not being deceived. He was part of the arrangement. A willing accomplice. Perhaps he had his own affair too. Maybe even with my husband. Who knows? It was an agreement, and I was the only one at that table who wasn't part of it. When they left, my husband wrapped an arm around my waist and said, "You're perfect. This dinner was amazing." I smiled, rested my head on his shoulder and thought, "Enjoy it, dear, because the days of perfect are over." The next morning I called my lawyer. No drama, no tears, just clarity. I need to review my marriage contract, urgently. We scheduled a meeting for that same day. I arrived with a flash drive, handwritten notes, and a level of mental focus I hadn't felt in years. When I sat across from him, I took a deep breath and said it plainly. My husband is cheating on me. I have proof. And before you ask, yes, I'm absolutely sure. He listened in silence. Professional, neutral. I played the recordings, explained the context, translated the most relevant parts. When I finished, he remained quiet for a few seconds. Then he said something that changed everything. You found out at exactly the right time. I frowned. I don't understand. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Our marriage contract. You married under full community property, correct? Yes, but with a specific clause. After 10 years, he would be entitled to half of your personal assets. Before that, nothing. My heart stopped. How much time is left? He checked the calendar, then looked at me. 7 weeks. 7 weeks. It felt like the universe had handed me a gift wrapped in irony. So he's waiting for the deadline to pass before filing for divorce. Most likely. Everything suddenly made sense. The patience, the timing, the just a little longer. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was counting days. My lawyer continued calmly. If you act now, before the deadline, he gets nothing. 0. But you need to be fast and precise. I met his gaze. What do I need to do? He gave a small, professional smile, the kind that says this just got interesting. Separate everything that is legally yours. Reorganize accounts, adjust registrations, document every step, and do all of this without him noticing. How much time do we have? 6 weeks. To be safe, I took a deep breath. Then, let's begin. The following days turned my life into a silent chess match. I reorganized investments, transferred funds, adjusted ownerships. Every move within the law, every step documented. My husband noticed nothing. He continued living his double life, convinced he was in control, speaking French near me whenever he wanted, smiling when he thought I wasn't paying attention. And me? I smiled too, because while he was counting days toward his victory, I was dismantling the entire board. 4 weeks later, I suggested something unexpected. Love, I think I need some time to travel alone, clear my head. He pretended to be concerned, but I saw the relief in his eyes. Are you sure? Where to? France. I've always wanted to go. He smiled, the smile of someone who had just won the lottery. I think it's a great idea. You deserve it. It will do you good. I'm sure it did. 3 days later, I was in Paris, and it wasn't by accident. France had always been special to me. I grew up hearing French at home. My grandparents were French. They spent my childhood teaching me the language, telling stories, singing songs. For them, French wasn't a foreign language. It was the language of the heart. I learned it naturally, effortlessly. And as I grew older, I kept practicing, quietly. I never felt the need to display it, never mentioned it to anyone, not even to my husband. He never asked. He never truly took an interest in my history, my family, my roots. And that lack of interest was what ultimately destroyed him. In Paris, I breathed differently. I walked ancient streets, sat in small cafes, spoke with strangers who didn't judge me, didn't know me, didn't expect anything from me. For the first time in years, I was just me. Not someone's wife, not someone's accessory, just me. And it was liberating, but I wasn't there only to wander. While he believed I was enjoying myself and finding myself, I was finalizing details, reviewing documents, speaking with my lawyer over video calls, preparing the final move, everything at the right time, everything at the right moment. One afternoon, sitting at a cafe by the Seine, I received the message I had been waiting for. Everything is ready. You can give the green light. I looked at the river, at the people passing by, at life moving calmly forward. I took a deep breath and replied, "Go ahead." I was still in Paris when it happened, and that was intentional. I didn't want to be nearby. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to hear desperate explanations or empty promises of change. I wanted him to receive the news alone, cold, direct, without an audience. It was a Tuesday morning. His phone rang. It wasn't me. It was a lawyer. My lawyer. The voice on the other end was neutral, professional, polite. He explained that the marriage was officially coming to an end, that all legal proceedings were already underway, that my husband had no claim to any of my personal assets. Mine, not ours. My husband tried to laugh. He thought it was a mistake. There must be some misunderstanding. My wife is traveling. She wouldn't do this without talking to me. There is no misunderstanding, sir. The separation was filed within the legal time frame. You have until Friday to vacate the property. Silence. A long, heavy, suffocating silence. Vacate? But the house is ours. No, sir. The house has always been registered in her name. That was the moment he began to understand. He tried calling me 10 times, 15, 20. I didn't answer. He sent messages, dozens of them, moving from confusion to anger to desperation, and finally, the most predictable of all, emotional manipulation. I read them all. I didn't reply to a single one. Hours later, he received another call, more formal, more technical, laying out exactly what had happened. The clause in the contract had been respected. The deadline had not been reached. All personal assets remained exclusively mine. Even the dog, yes, even the dog. That golden retriever he loved posting on social media, pretending to be the devoted dog dad, also mine, registered in my name, always had been. I had removed him from everything. And the best part? Everything was done legally. No loopholes, no errors, no room for appeal. He tried to negotiate, asked for a fair conversation, said we deserved to talk face to face. My lawyer was brief. All communication will be handled through legal representation. She does not wish to have direct contact. And that was that. Later, through a mutual acquaintance, I heard that he spent days in panic, revisiting old contracts, calling lawyers, searching desperately for a mistake, a loophole, a way out. There wasn't one. Because I didn't act on impulse. I acted with strategy, and strategy, when executed well, leaves no space for improvisation. I returned to Brazil 2 weeks later. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a message. I simply came back. I went straight to an apartment I had recently purchased. Small, functional, entirely mine. Far from the house we had shared. Far from memories. Far from him. 3 days later, he somehow got my new number. I don't know how. He called. That time, I answered. "We need to talk." His voice sounded different, less confident, almost humble. "You can talk. In person. Please." I considered refusing, but there was something I needed to see, something I needed to hear. We met at a public cafe, neutral, safe, with people around. When he arrived, I barely recognized him, not physically. He was still handsome, well-dressed, but something inside him was broken, something expensive clothes could no longer hide. He sat across from me, tried to smile, failed. You really did this?" "I did. But why? We could have talked, worked this out another way." I leaned slightly forward, looked straight into his eyes, and said in perfect French, "Because I understood every word you said." The color drained from his face. What? I continued in French, slowly and clearly. "Every dinner, every laugh, every plan. I understood everything." He froze. You speak French?" "Fluently, since childhood." I watched the exact moment he grasped the scale of the disaster. All the conversations, all the safe comments, all the secrets shared right in front of me. I had heard everything. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I gave a small, calm smile. "Because you never asked. You never took an interest. You never wanted to know who I really was." He tried to argue, to explain, to minimize, but I was already standing. "You believed I didn't understand the language. What you never understood was who I am." And I walked away, without looking back, without drama, without giving him the scene he was hoping for. Now, without romanticizing anything, let's be honest. Did it hurt? Yes, it did. It hurt to discover that the man I loved didn't truly exist. It hurt to realize that years of my life had been built around a carefully rehearsed character. It hurt to understand that while I believed I was living a real marriage, he was simply waiting for the right moment to leave, taking what he could. I cried. I cried alone in Paris, looking at the Seine. I cried in the shower quietly. I cried in the early hours of the morning when the house felt too large for just one person. I didn't cry because I still loved him. That feeling ended at that first table, when he laughed about something intimate with another woman right in front of me, believing I wouldn't understand. I cried because it hurts to be underestimated. It hurts to realize someone believed you were incapable of understanding. It hurts to discover you were treated like a background character in your own life. But what surprised me the most was something else. It passed. Not fast in the sense of being easy, but fast because the moment I stopped reacting and started acting, the pain changed shape. It stopped being weight and became clarity. Looking back now, I understand that my greatest mistake wasn't loving the wrong person. It was taking too long to trust myself, because I always felt it. Something was always out of place, but I chose to ignore it. I chose to believe the version that was offered to me, because it was more comfortable than facing the truth. Until the truth spoke another language right in front of me, and in that moment, pretending was no longer an option. My life today is different. Not better, not worse, just mine. I live alone. I work at what I enjoy. I travel when I want. I don't need to explain myself, ask for permission, or maintain an image that doesn't represent me. The dog sleeps on my bed, and yes, he's much happier now. Sometimes I cross paths with my ex. The city isn't that big. He always looks away. I keep walking. No anger, no resentment, no need to prove anything. Because to feel something for someone, that person needs to matter, and he doesn't anymore. I learned a few things from all of this. Silence isn't weakness when it comes from clarity. Being underestimated can be an advantage. Timing changes everything. Pain isn't permanent. Choices are. Some people ask if I regret anything. Just one thing, not trusting the woman I always was, because understanding that language didn't just give me proof. It gave me something much greater. It gave me the power to understand, the power to choose, the power to leave. Today, when I hear someone speaking French on the street, I smile. It isn't trauma. It isn't nostalgia. It's recognition. Because that language taught me something essential. True intelligence doesn't need to announce itself. It observes, it understands, and it knows when to move on. There is a kind of intelligence that doesn't need to be displayed. It observes, understands, and chooses the right moment to act. Strength doesn't always live in immediate reactions. Sometimes it lives in the ability to understand quietly and move forward with calm. Feminine intelligence exists in that peaceful space, where intuition and reason walk together, and decisions are born not from urgency, but from clarity. Knowing how to wait, knowing how to listen, knowing how to leave, is also wisdom. And recognizing your own value is one of the most elegant forms of freedom. If this story touched you in a quiet way, share it with someone special. And if you enjoy stories that honor sensitivity, clarity, and the quiet strength of women, subscribe to Stories We Tell. Here, every story is a gentle reminder. True intelligence doesn't make noise. See you in the next story.